our Go Beyond the Like segment. And this is where we take you beyond those likes and follows to really the heart of strategy and some of the more tactical things, some of the more strategic things. How should you be thinking about this? How does it actually work so that you are, connecting the dots back to that place of money in the bank, right? We go way beyond those likes and follows. All right. So today we're continuing our conversation about the sales funnel, right? And we're last Monday, if you did not have a chance to check out the episode, we 2 weeks ago, we did a sales funnel conversation and we were like crazy. We just overloaded you with information. So we got some feedback from Debbie to kind of scale it back. And we decided to do a 5-part series about the sales funnel and really tackle each part of the sales funnel in its own way. So if you did not get a chance to check out the brand awareness piece, go back. It was last Monday. Definitely check it out on YouTube. When we're talking about the sales funnel, we're talking about that path from when someone comes into your world to the time that they buy, right? So that know, like, trust factor. And we're talking about it from an online standpoint. Of course, there may be offline elements as well, but we want to make sure that you're really thinking through that sales funnel along with that customer journey that we always talk about, right? So when does someone get to know you? So last week, the brand awareness was them just getting to know, hey, this person exists, right? So today we're talking about the interest. So after, right, from the marketing standpoint, after you get to that place of, hey, I'm in the world, I see this brand, I am interested in what they have to say. This is your customer saying that, right? And you as the business, you have to prepare yourself for that interest stage of that target audience and then getting them to that place. So what are you going to present to them? So let's move on to the next slide. So in the interest stage at the business, next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about your action as the business, right? This is where you are adding value through a free resource, a downloadable, a checklist, educational videos, live podcasts, all these things, right? This is how you find a way to generate the interest. So they've come in from, let's say, when we talked about it on Monday, we talked about them coming in from an ad. So they're coming in from an ad, they click through, they get to your landing page, and you have the landing page that is saying, hey, you're in the right space. We can solve your problem. Here's your problem and here's our solution. But hey, you know what? Here's this thing that you can download to tell me that you're really interested in my potential product or service. So I get to go back to the CFO and have a thing I can check off to be like, hey, we had this many people download this checklist. So we know that there's some interest there. So that's the first step to getting to the money in the bank, right? The next thing we want to consider is after the interest, on my side, there's your action, then there's the customer reaction, right? Did they give you their email address? Did they give you more information? Did they spend, it doesn't just have to be an email address, right? There are other things can determine if they were interested. We talk about time on site all the time, right? If someone spends a minute or two reading your content, if you've created content that speaks to them, that page will probably be rich with information, right? And so making sure that, hey, wow, they're spending a minute reading all this content. That could tell you, hey, they're consuming my content. So that's another indicator of interest. You want to determine what says they're interested in your product or service so that you can then take them to the next step, right? If they give you an email address, amazing. If they don't, but they spend a minute on site, maybe this is where you can say, if you're working with an agency or internally, you're saying, hey, now we want to drive these people some retargeting ads because they showed some interest. They spent over a minute on our site. So let's get those ads that follow them around so we stay top of mind. So that's how you use that interest metric to maybe drive something else. Next slide. This is where we want to talk a little bit about the KPIs, right? So what are the KPIs that determine interest? So as you're building your sales funnel, you're saying, okay, great, brand awareness, awareness. They came in, they did the click through, they're here on the landing page. I'm getting the awareness. Now with the interest, how are you measuring that? You want to look to say, all right, I'm measuring the number of email addresses. I'm measuring the number of emails. I'm measuring the number of views, the number of downloads. You want to associate every part of the funnel with a metric. So you really move from that place of your action to the customer reaction to every action and reaction having a KPI that says this worked, this didn't work, you need to adjust. It gives you those data points to be able to adjust to. And that, my friend, is the marketing side of the interest.
A lot of the things that we're talking about are going to mirror each other because they just naturally do. So it is what Tamara's saying. You're going to hear again when I talk just a moment. But that's really important. We have to, the call and response pieces. It's key as we're doing the marketing piece that we're going to look for in the action from them, as well as what are the key performance indicators showing us.
And Deborah is asking, how often should we check our KPIs? I say at least weekly, because this is what's moving you towards the goal, right? So it's more traffic is coming to my website. When this traffic comes to my website, what happens? Am I getting more email addresses? When I get these email addresses, are they consuming my content? So you want to get to a place where you have some type of dashboard set up, right? Where I'm looking at these metrics, because you'll get to a place where you can say 600 people came to my website. Of those 600 people, 10% gave me their email addresses. And then of that 10%, 3% converted through my online pipeline. So you want to really look to see those metrics, and you want to say from brand awareness to interest to them getting to a place of conversion with you. So I would say weekly, and then you get into the more details around it, probably monthly. You're digging a little bit deeper into the higher level metrics, right?
And you're probably going to start off looking at it daily, right? You're probably going to want to look at it daily. You want to see it move. But yes, weekly is a better stance to take, because you want to see data over a period of time. But I wanted to interject here from the operations standpoint that you've got to be clear on which of those marketing assets denote interest, right? So we've given some examples of downloads and such, because now you want to make sure that the form that they fill in, say, to follow your newsletter, is very different from the form that allows them to download a white paper. So make sure that you're tagging your content to understand which forms are attached to which content, and which content is interest content, right? That it denotes that there's a level of interest. Also, that means that you can tag at this point in time where that customer is in their journey and notify the relevant departments accordingly.
I just want to add in terms of, how often we're checking the metrics. Yeah, we're probably excited. We want to check it every day, but don't forget to marry it against what is normal for your industry, for the space that you're in, right? So retail products, if you're trying to choose hair products or cosmetics, you don't take that long versus if you're trying to invest in somebody's services, like, say, a consultant, or if you're hiring a contractor, for example, to build your home. So just be mindful about what is normal for your space, because if you're in a longer cycle, then you need to give your time for your KPI to generate any sort of proper result. Checking it every day may not make sense. On the flip side, if you're in a faster turnover, yeah, you'll want to see how fast it is. So just to be mindful of, it should relate back to what is regular and considered normal for your industry and for your space.
100%. So, all right. So now we're going to move on to the sales portion of the interest side of the sales funnel.
Again, what I mentioned earlier, similar to what we had in the brand awareness, you'll see a lot of similarities in the action portion from a sales perspective that you saw in the marketing perspective, purposely, because a lot of our actions, we're speaking about these things in advance and understanding what are the things that we're trying to accomplish. So in the sales arena for our actions in the interest phase, we're looking to improve that like factor. As T said, the know, like, trust, we're in the like portion of this, and we want people to lean in a bit more and to pique their interest with a couple of things. the booking consults with us so that we can have, if you have a service-based industry where you're trying to understand a bit more about what their needs and their pains are, and inviting them in to learn more a bit about you during that one-on-one time. Affording your prospective clients an opportunity to review an ebook, participate in a complimentary webinar, download and review a checklist on a podcast, similarly to what we do here on Your Business in Digital. Provide samples. You may encounter a couple of these things. I think of if you're going to get paint chips, or if you're going to try makeups. For women, we encounter that often, where you can get samples of specific things, food samples, as you're in grocery stores. Those things are often offered. And trials, a free 2-week trial of something that you may get, or 30 days in some instance. That's affording your prospective clients an opportunity to get to know you, to like what you have to offer, to play with things a little bit. You're inviting them into your world. And I think at this stage, there is a version of what I like to say is, you're going to ask them to do something, ask for their business in a certain way by saying, download, book the consult, request that sample. So there's an ask of your prospective client to get that pulse check of what you are seeking, to know that you're going in the right direction. One of the things that we're looking for a client reaction, a prospective client reaction, or a returning, is for them to, again, here we go again, provide that email address, showing some interest in giving something of them that's personal to gain something on their end. Book that consult. So you want them to book an appointment with you that expresses interest because they're going to give you some of their time, their valuable time. They're clicking that download, so they're going to invest in order for them to provide that. Again, you're driving them to a specific place for them to download, and you're able to track that. And then to request that sample and be specific on the specific sample that they're requesting. So again, that's that call, and their response to your call is in their customer reaction, right? What are we looking for as far as KPIs are concerned? One of the biggest things that you're looking for is number of attendees. So for here in our world, in the YBID arena, we speak to this often. How many people are looking at our broadcast live in any one of the mediums that we are available? Are they reviewing our follow-ups? Are they commenting in the spaces that we're in? How many consults are booked? So how much of your calendar is being booked by prospective clients from this specific ask? Are we getting email addresses? The thing that I like in this area is the marketing qualified leads, the MQL. So the people that are expressing the initial interest are going down a specific marketing sales funnel that we call MQLs. And then finally, how many trials and samples are you getting? This is really key for us to understand. And as we are looking at these KPIs, it's not just from a sales lens that we're looking at this. Operations needs to view this as well. Our marketing team needs to understand this, and that's the given. But we need our finance and our operations team looking at this as well, because they need to anticipate the fulfillment portion of this that they may need to handle on their end. And so that's time, that's money, that is timeliness and customer service that's involved in this in many instances. If you're giving something that's tangible as a sample or as a trial for a client to understand how to handle and work with your product.
I can't say this enough. It's just like hearing it, it's like, man, we are literally breaking down the silos because we have to talk about these things, right? So there's the meeting where sales now goes back. Marketing is kind of like, all right, here are my data points and here are the things that are relevant to you. Does this report come to you on a monthly or weekly basis, right? Or so that you now know, hey, these are the things I'm looking at and we're on the same page, right? Same thing with finance. What comes from there? What are you getting? And just the flow of operations. So there's this holistic approach. That's what we want. And it's just like, the more you reinforce that, it's the better I feel. All right. Too much fun.
Too much fun. but so listen, and once you move from that awareness, so as a business, it's absolutely possible for your ideal customers to be aware of your brand, but you don't know that they're aware of your brand. So in the interest stage, you now are aware that they are interested in your brand, they know your brand, they're interested in your brand. And the next part that should be on these slides that we're showing is that what you're developing as well is what's that next call to action that moves them to the next stage. So they're in the interest stage, they've downloaded that trial, they've asked for a sample, they've booked a consultation. But then what are the pieces now that say, now that you've done this, this is what can happen next?
I think it's important too, as we're looking at this, and I'm sorry, Andrew, but something that you said, Michael and Tamara, we actually, in our own, just for transparency's sake, we look at our numbers every Thursday. We're taking a glance at things. We're looking at it right after the show because we want to understand where the numbers are, but we go into a deeper dive. And I find it always interesting how we are perceiving it from our lens and the value in our interpretation that we're putting on the table that I might not see in a finance way, or T, when you serve it up to us from a marketing perspective and how you're connecting dots differently than how I'm connecting in sales. And I find that it makes us a stronger group as we're educating each other and giving a different view on those specific KPIs or what that action meant. And I think that's important for our community to understand as well. We can't just be a single source of information.
What she said. but it was really about, that connected. I like the, what Michelle said, but yeah, it's really about, breaking down the silos and everybody getting pieces of information from everybody else so that the decision that is made from a holistic level. Because remember, your CFO is sitting at a higher level. So this is a reminder for CFOs to be part of the conversation, right? Be part of these conversations so that the KPIs that sales is pulling out, you now take it and apply it into your space and see what it's telling you about where the business is going. So
amazing. So which means that we're now moving on to the finance portion of the sales funnel and that perspective, which is exactly what we need to continue to connect the dots.
Yep. So let's talk about the money parts of the funnel, right? You have to understand that up until the point of a sale actually being made, money is still going out the door, right? So finance is going to be a kind of monitoring of what's happening in terms of the spend. But let's talk about the first action. So the first action, at least in finance books, we're looking at, well, has the customer booked a consultation? Have they requested a demo? Have they asked us to submit a proposal, right? So what is the ask of us as the business? Customer is saying, or we put out there, book the consultation. We're putting out there, we're telling the customer, hey, we want you to book a call. So what do? They book the call. We're looking to see, have they booked the call? Have they sent the DM? Or have they requested the proposal? Now, this is where the money part is. This is the considering. So this activity that is happening where potentials are in our space, they're expressing interest. The cost that we want to look at is how much does this activity cost us? How much does a consultation cost? How much does a demo activity cost? And this may look like things like, if it is we're doing a demo activity, and a demo activity could be simple as going to the if you have a product or a service, going to the potential's location and seeing, actually demonstrating the product or pitching yourself in a meeting. What does that look like as an hourly rate of the people involved, right? So are you sending a manager? Are you sending yourself, right? Are you going down there? Time equals money. You also want to understand, what is the cost if you're giving away physical products? Maybe you're at a location that you're giving out samples, right? What is the cost of these freebies, right? What we call the freebies. So we mentioned that, I think, in the sales, where we spoke about the downloadables and we spoke about giving out of those things. From a finance perspective, we want to understand how much is this going to cost, because while we understand that it's needed, I also don't want to bust the budget either in terms of spending a lot of money on people that may not convert or still trying to figure out if they can convert. You want to have a healthy balance at this point in time. And you also want to make sure that the cost of what you're giving for free is not so exorbitant that when it comes to the actual product, the value is not there anymore. So one of the key things that from a CFO perspective that I would be looking to understand is, if we are in the interest phase, how much is my interest phase costing me? And what that looks like is, how much does it cost to do a proposal? So from a finance perspective, we may want to ask things like, okay, how many people did it take to build out a proposal? Because especially let's use Monovan Digital, for example, as an agency, when you're pitching to clients, you probably have to do a deck. You probably have to do pre-meetings with your team to understand what the client wants. That may take a couple hours. And even if you had a template that you've been pulling from before, it still doesn't take away from the fact that you have to give some sort of effort. And that effort has to come with a cost in it, because the cost could mean the time that you took 10 hours to dedicate to spending time with this potential versus 10 hours that you could have done with a working client who was giving you money already. So those are the type of things when we think about cost. While it's tempting to say, well, how much it costs in terms of money going out, there's also opportunity cost playing out in there, right? The cost of the product that you gave away versus the cost of it being sold as money coming in, right? So that's the one metric that I want people to pay attention to when we're talking about this interest phase. Because at this interest phase, the no could come just as easily as a yes. So you don't want to be spending so much money in a space where the no could very well happen, and then that money kind of could be seen to be lost, or it could be a not right now, which is just a long no, maybe to next year. But for me, that's when I think about this part of the sales funnel. This is what came to mind for me. How much are we spending on this phase of the funnel towards these people?
I love that you bring up the opportunity costs, because the economics in my brain was just like, oh boy, it feels like economics class, right? It's just like opportunity cost. I was just like, yeah, speak my language. Anyway, so one of the things we do now is give people an idea of their potential market share online, right? As a part of that before proposal. So we're talking a little bit to them. So it takes a little time to pull that together, right? Because I have to do a little bit of homework. I have to kind of pull a video together. And while it's a screen share video, it still takes about, an hour or so to say, okay, this has to be done in order to move the needle forward, because we see that it helps our funnel a little bit better if things are customized to them. So we now have to look at that. And what does that look like at the next step? Because that's a piece that we want to leverage within our funnel, because we get to narrate the information back to the customers. There's value there. So we now have to measure that up against ROI to see eventually, does this make sense as we continue to move business forward? Does it make sense? Can we do it? And then can we teach somebody else on the team to do it as well? So it becomes a little bit more efficient, right? Because it'll cost more for me to continue to do it. And if we were able to have somebody else do it on the team, a few other people, now we're saying, hey, we can split it over time. So those are some considerations in the interest phase that we as Monovan Digital are doing. And did you hear that? We also do high-level assessment of your market, when we're in the interest phase. So, just shameless plug.
Andrea, I love that you opened the door to this part of the conversation from a sales and pricing perspective. And so I'm going to pull back a lot and go back to the pricing component of what you are offering. The time investment that we're speaking of here for the prep time, especially we're speaking of some of the service components of this on doing a deck, looking at the assessment, should be built into your pricing when you're assessing what you are trying to come to market for that particular service. The prep work, the time that you're meeting for a consult, the market, and who within your team is doing it should be included in your pricing. Time in motion. How long does it take you to do this? all of those, that fine detail we talked about a couple of shows ago, that needs to be included within the pricing component. How long does it take you to do a demo? And is it somebody that is of a higher cost to your team? Is it something that they can watch as a video to get to know you as part of the demo? All of those things need to be included in your price and in your time and motion that you're doing. One of the things I love that you said is understanding whether or not they're going to be a no is part of the self-qualification part. So help yourself. Michael will likely allude to components of this, but when they're booking time for you, many of these booking applications allows you to send pre-qualifying questions, have a lot of those things answered in advance so that you walk into that consult understanding where that person is in the selling cycle. So there's a lot of components in the give and take, the call and response that will help you to get to know them, help them to get to know you and set an expectation, but help you in the qualification component of this like stage that we're getting into in the interest component of this. So I love that we're speaking about this because a lot of this goes back to pre-homework and setting yourself up for success to understand what that cost is in the sales cycle of where we are in the interest phase.
And that Andrea as well talked about, that personal time. So if you're using, as you said, if you're using Google or using Calendly or another tool to schedule those discovery calls, to schedule those meetings, then how many hours total are you scheduling per month toward discovery calls, right? Because typically each call may be 20 to 40 minutes, anywhere between that. So in real world, that's just an hour, right? That's an hour. You're going to cost that at an hour. You're not going to cost it at the 20 minutes or the 40 minutes. So your clear operational outline is going to inform what are the costs. Because yes, some of the content type downloads in that interest area, when we talk about white papers and so, may be done once and may last you for most of the year. So the cost necessarily is really small, but the time, what can eat that time is those meetings. So if that's part of your funnel, you want to make sure you're clear. How many am I scheduling for the month? What fits into that interest phase? Is it working to move them to the next stage of the funnel?
Can I add one more thing to what Michael just said too? And that one of the things I invite you, our community, to consider that I speak to with my clients all the time is when you're looking at this assessment, look at the segmentation, look at the mix of what's coming through. How many demos did you end up doing? How many of the samples or the downloads were there? If that mix exactly or near what you predicted it to be, and where's that time devotion going? What has moved along? That's going to give you your guideline of where you need to move, how you've been moving, and where you need to refine and define something else a bit differently than you did before, or lean harder into something that may be progressing a bit faster at the price point that you find more appealing to bring you more revenue flowing down to the bottom line, not just hitting the top, but how much of that's flowing down in the best way possible for the health and benefit for your business.
Something that just came to mind as we think about the interest part, as well as be careful not to stay in what I am calling an interest loop, where these people are just in the funnel forever. So we have to, while we're costing it out, we have to be able to attach some sort of time to it. Again, coming back to what I said with what is normal for you, right? If it takes about a month or two, that's fine. But just be careful that these people in the interest funnel, just in the interest stage, just don't stay cycling and eating up all the freebies, right? And eating up all the freebies that you're giving them. And you're just constantly in this motion. You end up spending money that may not necessarily lead to a yes, right? So that's a thought that came to my mind. So just be careful that while the freebie itself might be cheap, or I shouldn't want to use the word cheap, but while it might not cost you much individually, be careful that accumulatively the person has not been eating up and taking up so much of your time, because then that could be dangerous as well.
Go, Mike, your final thoughts.
I think all of this shows where you can operationally lay out what you're doing, right? So we're being very clear on what constitutes the interest phase. yes, you will see that content works in different phases, right? It works for different phases, so it can work for both brand awareness and interest. You want to make sure that, as we said, you are tagging that content that denotes interest. So you're being very clear about which content and what action denotes interest. And you're being very clear about what's that call to action. Once they've taken that action that shows interest, what's that next call to action that moves them into the next phase of the funnel?
What everybody said. I think this is a great holistic conversation, right, that we're having here around the sales funnel. I think we're also talking to businesses that should be at a place of efficiencies as well, too, right? So if you are just starting your business, make sure and don't just be in the interest loop for sure. But if you've been in business for a while, you understand what the pipeline looks like, who's going to be ready 3 months from now, because you have those indicators. And we're just getting this funnel to be tighter and tighter and refining the funnel so that it becomes efficient. And then you break down those silos so you have something that is really working, because it's probably working already. If you've been in business 2+ years, it's probably working. So we're looking now to say, all right, let's talk to all these folks and then see how we can break things down. So I'm going to give everyone 30 seconds to wrap it up because I know Nia's in the background. Let's go. 30 seconds for you, Michelle, Andrea, Mike. Well, Mike, you kind of gave your final thought, and then we'll get out of here.
From a sales perspective, I'm going to say focus on the focus. In this stage, you begin asking for the sale, and the sale could look like something different every time. Book the appointment, download, comment, like, share. There's an ask, and that leans into exactly what Andrew is saying, is you're going to get a pulse check to where they are, how much pain they're in, and what response you need to give to them to move them to the next phase. So find it within yourself to ask for something so that you can get exactly what you're seeking on the opposite end to move to the next stage that we're going to talk about next week.
All right. And well, of course, for me, focus on or at least pay attention to how much this is costing you, right? And at this stage of the funnel, finance still hasn't seen money coming in yet. We're still just talking potential. So you want to make sure that you strike that balance between how much I spend to get here, to get the person coming in the door, versus how much I'm eventually going to get. So you want to make sure that we tight on that, and use the other departments to help you with that decision, as Michelle just mentioned, in terms of the different actions. Have a conversation with sales to find out, well, okay, based on the KPIs that you are tracking, who are the ones that seem that they're taking the different actions and seem to be wanting to move forward? And then focus on those. From a finance perspective, you could authorize, well, okay, let's spend a little bit more money on them because I think they're taking the actions and I think they're more likely to say a yes, versus the others who may not be so engaged. So be mindful of the spending versus when you eventually get that money. Because what you don't want to happen is that when the sale eventually comes, it just makes you break even because you've just gotten back what you spent on the interest fees.
The sales funnel can go on and on and on and on. Great information. Thank you, Deborah. The sales funnel, we love talking about the sales funnel. It's such an important part of the conversation for your business. So consider, if you have not had this conversation with sales, finance, and operations, that you step in and you do have the conversation. What does our sales funnel look like? Have we thought it out? Do we have an outline for it? Is it something that's there and you just never pinpoint it? Go and look at it, right? And say, hey, this is our awareness phase. These are the phases. Put that into perspective for your business. It'll be really helpful.